Hi, this is Jeff Disher. This is the first entry in my new video weblog where I want to talk about computers and what aspects of them could be understood in greater detail by average users. And so the main question, of course, to ask to start this off is, okay, where do we start? It's a big area of study, obviously. It's one that I've spent my entire life in. And there's a lot to talk about. A lot of it's really interesting, and a lot of it has a lot of either interesting current use cases, interesting history, or interesting technical details. And the degree to which I can get into those different things, different aspects of each area, is something we can talk about more as we go forward. Generally, I want to keep it fairly non-technical, non-historical, but I can do those deeper dives if that's of interest. So first of all, a bit about my background. I'm a computer programmer by trade. I graduated from the University of Waterloo in Ontario with a Bachelor in Mathematics in 2005. I worked for Corel several years ago, back when I was a student still actually. I worked for IBM for several years, both as a student and professionally after graduating. And now I work for Google here in Kitchener-Waterloo. So there's the open question of, all right, well, what kinds of things can be talked about? The list is sort of very open-ended, obviously, but just to sort of get the ball rolling, so to speak, here's some basic ideas to start with. Like some of the things that just came off the top of my head when thinking about this, what kind of content could go into this. First of all, there's sort of some background, basic things that are not terribly complicated, very simple about, okay, well, what actually are the units we're talking about? There's things like, well, what is RAM? What's storage? What's it mean for a CPU's clock frequency? What's the difference between a megabyte and a megabyte? All those small details from that era. Also, there's more about usage and how that actually works. Like, well, what is a computer? How does it work? What uses CPU? What uses RAM? Things like that. Because one of the things I've heard a lot of people say is things like, well, no wonder my computer's slow. There's 30 programs running. Well, depending on what those programs are doing, that might not matter. So this sort of, I want to be able to dive into some of those issues in that talk. Also, kind of as a follow-on to that, nowadays when we have multiple CPUs, multiple cores, what does that mean? What does that do for me? This is something we've had for quite a while, and well, what's it actually helping you do? What does this do for you? Also, there's issues of software too, especially these days where things are becoming increasingly done with a web browser. Well, just basically, how does the internet work in terms of when you open up your web browser and point it to a website? What's that actually do? What's going on? How is it looking it up? How does a website work in terms of a web server somewhere else on the internet? How do you actually interact with that? And what does it mean? Also, kind of along the same lines, but with the throwback to another technology which has been around for ages, in many ways predates the internet, at least in some form, is email itself. It was designed to work really well back in the era where the internet was new, and there was very little to it. A lot of sites would be, like, there were a lot of technical difficulties, still sites disappearing and stuff like that, and it worked really well back then. And still today, now that everything's online all the time, there's massive amounts of bandwidth going around, lots of data being thrown between servers, it still works really well. So there's some interesting aspects to how that actually works, just from a global point of view, not on the protocol level, that helps it actually solve a lot of problems within how our workflows work, and the reason why we basically still all use a lot of it today. Also, I'll talk a bit about the difference between some email clients and web browser clients, because that's something that I think has sort of been forgotten in a lot of modern use, and there's some real advantages there that people are losing out on as a side effect. So overall, this is something that I want it to be kept very free form. Like, ask a question, I'll try and put something together, 5 or 10 minutes to talk about it. I'm not going to give any incredibly technical detail on things to start with, but if people want to dive deeper into that, I can do that as well. I can talk about things like how certain aspects of programming work, but I want to keep it for the most part very, very high level, very non-technical, and just this is how it actually works, this is how to think about it, and this is why it would matter. But there's a lot that can be done with this as we go forward, so please send me an email or reply a comment to the thread here, and I'll see what I can do and put something together for the stream. Anyway, hope to hear from you. Bye.